Moving on to another big story which will impact healthcare in India, and that of course is the cabinet which has cleared the new national pharmaceutical policy. The cabinet and government feels that this will help bring the prices of essential medicines down, because what it does is that the prices of 348 formulas, these are formulations, will now be under government control. So it could also affect many more individual medicines which are based on these formulas. The price control will be based on an average of the price of various medicines based on each formulation. So the market price really, though it won't necessarily cut all prices, activists argue, loosely put, is that companies could increase their price in the market, which would push up the average price. One big shift, of course, is that it shifts from the cost-based regime, which currently is what all controlled drugs were under, which basically means that the cost of the drug plus a certain profit, and there were only about 74 drugs under price control. What happens now is that 348 drugs come under price control, but under market base, and there's a huge divide between public activists and between pharmaceutical companies on this. Joining me for more on that is two very prominent doctors. I'm joined by Dr. Randeep Guleria of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Delhi. I'm also joined by Dr. Devi Shetty, a well-known cardiologist of the Narayana Hridalaya in Bangalore. Thank you both very much for joining me. Now, of course, this pharmaceutical policy cleared just days before the Supreme Court is to hear the issues around this, because of course the Supreme Court won't interfere in policy, but they said we will see that medicines will not stay out of reach of the common man. Dr. Shetty, do you think this new pharmaceutical pricing policy is a good one?
I don't think so. I think it's very important for us to understand that the market forces are strong enough to decide the price of the drugs. Are we controlling the price of rice? Are we controlling the price of sugar? In what way drugs are different? What has happened over a period of time by government trying to keep the price artificially down is that we are getting a lot more substandard drugs compared to what we were getting years ago. And a lot of companies in India have stopped manufacturing basic drugs. It is much cheaper for them to import from China. But in the process, we are actually killing the pharmaceutical industry. It's very, very important for us to nurture the pharmaceutical industry. Ultimately, I understand that the drug prices have to be affordable, but in this country, anybody can start a drug company. If a company start jacking up their price, there will be competitors who will come forward and reduce the price. So let's leave it to the market forces. I'm sure the market forces will give the right price.
That's an interesting point, Dr. Shetty, because especially as you're somebody who deals with so many poor people who come the thousands to your hospitals every day. Dr. Guleria, again, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, you've seen patients from around India who come here, and often the issue really is of medicines. AIIMS will offer free medicines, but private hospitals won't. And the Supreme Court made the point today that when you talk about the 32, not today but last week, that when you talk about the 32 rupees poverty line cutoff, medicines can cost you 60 rupees for an antibiotic. Dr. Shetty says he feels that let market forces decide, but in India often market forces means that medicines can be out of the reach of a large part of India's population. What do you see as the way ahead?
No, there are two things in this. One very important thing is that there are antibiotics which are extremely expensive, and most of patients pay out of their pocket. We don't have an insurance system, we don't have free medicines, and therefore it is extremely difficult for them to pay for these antibiotics, and therefore there is a need to have some sort of a price control. The second most important issue is that when we are having a price control, we must also have a very good quality control, and we need to balance this fact with the price control and make sure that the pharma industry, as has been said, is properly nurtured in terms of the fact that it gets some degree. After all, it's a business, so they have a margin of profit which encourages them to continue with the business. But the margin of profit should not be, say, 20 times or 100 times what is the actual manufacturing cost. And very often the initial cost is high because of the fact that there is a research involved, there is a lot of investment which the company puts in to get the molecule out. But once that has been sort of, the returns have come back, then there is a need to look at public interest and bring down the prices so that it's within the reach of the middle class and the lower middle class.
Dr. Shetty, one aspect is of course that public health activists argued very strongly in the Supreme Court as well against changing the policy from going from cost based to market based, because their point is that market prices can be manipulated, companies can get together and form a cartel. You're not worried about that, because they, in fact, public health activists have said that there must be price control and it must be on cost base.
See, my biggest concern is if we keep on reducing the price of the medicines, a time will come that Indian companies will no longer be interested. Then we will be forced to depend on the foreign companies. And the way the prices are fixed, it is not, my impression is that it is not based on sound fundamentals. I'll give an example. The insulin today, if it is produced by an Indian company, the government's rate is much less than when the insulin is imported. So what is the message you are giving? So in the process, it is much more lucrative for foreign companies to import insulin rather than Indian companies to work hard and make insulin. This is very, very unfair.
Many have pointed to the case of Cipla, where we saw what happened globally when they slashed their prices, and we saw many others follow suit. They've done that with cancer drugs as well. Some would argue that when they do that, it points to the fact that profit margins are extremely inflated, that you do need some kind of regulator to keep prices under control. So they've actually welcomed more and more drugs coming under price control. Do you agree with that view, Dr.
Exactly,
Guleria?
because if you look at the story of, say, antiretroviral drugs, that is for HIV, and if you see the cost which was there, say, 10-15 years ago, Cipla really brought it down dramatically, and that really helped the market to a large extent, because people who could not afford antiretroviral drugs, now in our country they're free, but at that point in time, and that was the story in Africa itself, and Cipla was able to provide much cheaper drugs, fixed dose combinations to a large part of the world at a very, very reasonable and low cost, still having a margin of profit and still doing very well. So they brought the price down significantly as compared to what was in the foreign market, were able to do very well. So it's an issue of looking at your sales and the margins, the turnovers and the profit that you can make. So I do agree we need to have a balance. You can't have prices which will lead to negative growth as far as the pharmaceutical industry is concerned. But at the same time, you can't have prices which are outlandish and which are going to really hit the pocket of the poor man, which is really not warranted.
Dr. Shetty, in the current scenario, wasn't that happening? Before this new pharmaceutical policy, with only 78 drugs under price control, wasn't there an issue with how high the costs of drugs actually were?
See, the prices of the drug, essentially, first of all, I want you to understand that in this country we have the largest number of US FDA approved drug manufacturing units outside US.
Yes.
We have enough companies who are very, very big, who are very, very competitive, and the competition itself will level the prices. We don't have to artificially try to bring down the prices.
Right. So two interesting contrasting views there. Let's see, as you said, the Supreme Court can't decide policy, but let's see what they say on the 27th. Dr. Shetty, Dr. Guleria, thank you so much for joining me tonight on this debate on something which can really have a crucial impact on medicines and how much they will cost for you and me.
India's #1 news app just got even better. Download NDTV's new app, fully optimized for retina display, full screen view, faster response time, and Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.